Okay, I've started the record. Fine. So before we start, I'd like to introduce our expert for today's session. For this session, Dr. Jyoti Prakash Singh. Sir has received the BTech degree in Computer Science and Engineering and MTech in Information Technology in 2000 and 2005, respectively, and the PhD degree from the University of Calcutta in 2015. He is currently an assistant professor with the Department of Computer Science and Engineering, National Institute of Technology, Patna, India. He has co-authored 6 books in the area of C programming, data structure, and operating systems. Apart from this, he has more than 50 research publications in various national and international journals and conference proceedings. His research interests include text mining, social network, sensor network, information security, and data mining. He is a senior member of IEEE and life member of Computer Society of India, Indian Society of Technical Education, member of the ACM International Association of Engineers, International Association of Computer and Information Technology. With this brief introduction, now I'd like our speaker expert, Dr. Jyoti Prakash Singh, to hand over this, to take over this session. Thank you, sir. Please.
Thank you, Sunil, for the nice introduction. Thank you. And so first of all, good morning to all of you. And as the topic, you might have seen from the schedule that the topic which I'm supposed to discuss is introduction to deep learning, and that's nowadays a buzzword everywhere. You can see, you can hear this word, you can see the applications of this. So I will just cover basics of what deep learning is. Why is deep learning so popular right now? Why is the right time to learn and deploy deep learning models, and so on. So let us start with that. So let us start a learning problem. So what is a learning problem? So say if I give a image, in this case here, it's a motorcycle image, a bike image, and I want that I should have some algorithm or some stuff missing here, the arrow which is on here. So given an image, I want a machine, or I want an algorithm, I want a box, or I want something or some magic which can really say that this is a motorcycle. Now we humans are too good in this one. So given any image, we can easily say that, okay, this is the image. So that's not a difficult problem for us. But why is so difficult problem, or why we are posing it as a difficult problem for computers, or why the computers are not so good in this? Now, when this image is given to computer, actually the camera or the computer system, the memory, this bike is never represented with what it is presented in on the slide. So the byte is represented in computer's memory as numbers. So you can see if I take a very small area of this bike, then that area will be represented by some number. Say if it is 8-bit representation, then some number between 0 and 255. And if it is since it is a color image, so we'll have 3 channels like this. So it's very difficult to say things. So what is the meaning of 60, 45, 63, 99, 60, and so on? So this number doesn't mean anything. In fact, this number doesn't relate to this concept of bike. That's the issue. So the issue is, and I just forget to say, so the participants, the class will be really interesting. If you have any question at any time, you just interrupt me. Let's have a discussion on that instead of just going it one way. Okay. So it is my request. It is a sincere request to everyone. So those who are listening, if you have any doubt, any question, any thing to supplement, I will be more than happy to have that question or that suggestion or that interruption from your side at that particular moment. So the real issue is, now you can understand, the real issue is we human beings perceive this or view this particular bike or this image as a bike because we know that if it has got 2 wheels, if it has got some sort of engine here, a brake here, some mirrors here, So this basically is an these are the parts of, or these things constitutes a bike. But when we represent this, so on paper we say this, or even in reality we say this, so we can easily say that this is a bike. But if someone gives me some representation like this, certain numbers like this, so it's a big, huge, it will be a huge matrix, no doubt, you can easily understand. And in that huge matrix, certain numbers are given: 194, 210, 201, 212, 29, 199. What is this? Is it a bike? Is it a cat? Is it a dog? Is it a room? What it is? So from these numbers, it's really hard to find out any meaning from this. So that's the issue. So that's why it is so hard. What we can do? So normally you might have heard so far, or you might have, you might be say going through some other from other speakers also, that okay, given an image, we can basically find out certain say we can label them. That okay, this is, so when we talk about supervised learning technique, then we say that okay, given an image or any data set, we assign a correct label for that, and based on that correct label, our system learns exactly what it should be. So say if we have labeled this, okay, these are cars, these are non-cars, and so pixel versus pixel, if we just plot this, so if we plot okay, some pixel or pixel 1 versus pixel 2, so the image of a car may fall here, bike may fall here. So these are basically it should not have been cars, it should have been vehicles. So these vehicles may come here, here. So because there is as such, it's very difficult to say at what pixel value, because we are plotting it with respect to simply pixel values. So if we go ahead, we can have such representations like this. So here you can see that these pluses are the vehicles, and this minuses represents, or these red colors represents non-vehicles or non-cars. So some more. So what is the issue? Now, if we have this, and now we want to find out, given an image, whether it's a car or not, it's really a very difficult issue. You have to fit a very complicated function in order to differentiate between this. You can see that they are overlapping at lot of places, and since they are overlapping, it is really very difficult to segregate them. On the other hand, if by some means we can find out, okay, if something has wheels, something has handles, and then if we plot them, then probably the things which have got some, say, wheels versus handles, they may fall at some similar locations, say the car, bike, cycles, planes, buses, all these may come at one location probably, and all other things which doesn't have that sort of wheel may come on the other side, or if the number of wheels are less, and so on. And then it will be quite easier to draw a line or basically differentiate. And you might have seen so far for last 2 days that whether it's a naive Bayes or it's a say support vector machine, you are ultimately going to draw a line. So that line will create, or we call it as discriminate boundary. So we are trying to create a discriminate boundary. So this boundary, then it is very easier to create this discriminate boundary. So what I just tried to focus by these slides is, now instead of representing this as pixels, if we can say basically represent this, or if we can find out some concepts information from this bike. So if I can say, okay, if this is a bike, then there is a wheel, there is a handle, and there is a engine part, and then there is a braking system, and so and so, then based on that, it will be quite easier to identify that this is a bike, and even a computer can identify this. So that's what basically we are thinking when we are talking about deep learning models. And that's what differentiate basically the machine learning models from the deep learning models. So now with this introduction, let us try to define what exactly is deep learning. So deep learning means using a neural network with several layers of node between input and output. So you can see in a deep learning, we are talking about two different things. One is the neural network. So it's no doubt a neural network. There is There is absolutely no question on that. So it's a neural network. And what is special with that neural network is it has got several layers of node. So with that space, with that network and with several layers of nodes, now we'll see what are the issues with several. So we, first of all, so in the subsequent part of the lecture, I will discuss a brief about how to start building a neural network, and then what problems may arise, why we were restricted so many years by not including or by not adding several layers of nodes. So what was the idea, why deep learning started so late, and so. The second thing is, why is it generally better than other models, other methods on image, speech, or certain other types of data? So as I have just drawn, just given that image or that example, so the series of layer between input and output do feature identification processing. So earlier we were trying to identify feature by manual extraction. So manually the human experts were used to identify the different features from the object, and they used to basically give those features to the machine learning algorithms, and based on that the machine learning algorithm used to identify or used to differentiate and draw the line. Now with deep learning models, we are saying that models will identify or do the feature identification and processing in a series of stages, similar to what our brain seems to. So even our brain also seems to do something like that. So it goes into a series. Why we are thinking of deep learning models right now? So the first and most important part is we have automated feature extraction. In earlier or with any machine learning problem, if a machine learning solution, if you are going to use a machine learning based technique. So first of all, from a given data, I think next slide we have. So this is the conventional machine learning model. So we have an input, then we do some sort of feature extractions. Now what sort of features? So we manually extract that, okay, then if it is a car, or say given an image, how many circles are there? Might be the circles will represent wheel. What is the shape of this? So whether it's rectangular, circular, or how, if it is circular, how many circles are there? How many semicircles are there? What is the color? And so and so. So all these efforts or all these works were done by human being, and these were called as feature extraction. Normally, in case of image, we never extract features like that how many how many tires are there, or how many wheels are there, or how many doors are there, or how many glasses are there. We extract feature, we extract basically statistical features. Statistical feature means what is the average given one pixel, what is the average neighborhood of that pixel. So what is the distribution of the pixel values in that image, and so and so. So we have several statistical, although this is not a class of image. So, but you can see those who are working on image processing, they know that given an image, we can find out several statistical features. Like GLCM is one very popular feature extraction or texture extraction techniques we say. So those sort of features this human being is basically extracting. Now once extracted, we can give those features along with the supervised label to this classification method. And now this classification can be done using, say, a simple net base. It can be a support vector machine. It can be a logistic regression. And then that model, based on these features, the model will identify whether it's a car or non-car. But the most painful part in this whole process is this feature extraction. Because if the features are not well extracted, these classification modules are not going to behave properly, or they are not going to give you a very promising result, very good result. If you can identify, so most of the earlier research, so if you look into the research which were done around in 2000, so most of them were concentrated towards feature extraction, so better feature extractions. How to extract features better? So given any image, how to find out in one particular domain, how to find out suitable features, distinguishing features in that particular domain. And for that, you need to have an expert in that. So you need to really go through the different sort of images in that domain and different, say, distinguishing features, what you can find out. And then there were some features which will change if the image is rotated. So people think of, say, scale invariant and shift in and sort of, so those sort of features which are invariant. So even if we have a smaller size image or a larger size image, the feature remains same. So finding those features were really a challenge. So what deep learning is doing? Deep learning is integrating these two things. So this feature extraction and classification, both are added together. So now we have an image. We give that image to our deep learning models, and then this deep learning is basically predicting whether it's car or non-car. Now what it is doing now, so we are giving the raw pixels now. So here we are not giving raw pixels to this classification module. So in this classification module, we seldom give the raw pixels. We normally give features extracted by a human being. Here, regularly we are going to give, always we are going to give the raw pixel values. Now once this raw pixel value is given, what this network will, or this deep learning module will try to do, they will draw the concepts. As I told, so given this image, this network at the first layer will try to might be trying to find out how many, where are the horizontal lines, vertical lines, circular lines, semicircular lines, and how many of them are there. So based on that, in the next layer, it may find out how many circles are there. Probably they will represent the wheels and so and so. And so on. So at every successive layer, it is going to learn a concept. So at the first layer, it started or it learned only the straight line, vertical line, or some simple curve. In second line, it tries to make, the complete circle. In third line, it tries to redraw the other part in that wheels if there are something or the number and so. And based on that, so this part you can understand that if this is the, here we have the real last line, last classifier, last node, then this is input. Here we learn an abstract concept, next better refined concept, next refined concept, and then we classify. So as I was trying to say in the first in few earlier slides, that we are trying to find out if there is any wheel, or if there are, how many wheels are there, if there is any handle, if there are, if it is, so how many number of handles. So these wheels, these handles, everything is going to be slowly, as it goes deeper through this network, that concept is learned. So probably at the last layer, you may understand that this is, sir class mein hai, baad mein baat karte hain. So it will create that concept basically. Okay, so automatic feature extraction, that's the major benefit. So it obviously the human effort is minimized. Unsupervised learning. So in unsupervised, I mean to say not only in terms of that unsupervised, but unsupervised means the human intervention is very less. So here we have a lot of human intervention. Here we have very less. This word is not very good. So it's human intervention because the data set is huge nowadays. So earlier we had very small data sets, and with small data set it was very easy to tune or find out all those things and supervise that, check that how many of them are correct or incorrect. But nowadays, since we have a voluminous, we have huge number of data sets. So if it is, even if you think of that manually, we will go and check, it's not possible. So in that sense, it is unsupervised. Concept learning, again, as the features are extracted from those features, it is trying to build certain concepts, like the concept of a wheel, the concept of a brake, the concept of an engine, and so on. And no doubt, learning from unlabeled data. So we have huge volume of unlabeled data. So from that unlabeled data, how this or say deep learning models are able to say a lot of things. So we have nowadays a number of deep learning models which are employed in unsupervised cases, and they are very successfully doing. So there are some great statements given by the experts. In fact, say you can say one of the leading researchers in the deep learning and machine learning field. So feature engineering is the process of using domain knowledge of the data to create features that make machine learning algorithms work, that we all know. So Sam Mills says that when working on a machine learning problem, feature engineering is manually designing what the input X should be. And that already I have told that in fact this feature engineering is the input which is given to the model. And now coming up with the features is difficult, time consuming, and require expert knowledge. So as I told that prior to deep learning era, most of the time what human being used to do, we are just trying to find out the different features, better features. And those better features, finding those better features is really difficult, time consuming. So what's actually new in this deep learning era? So basically neural networks are existing for say for last 20, 30, more than in fact 50 years now, almost 40-50 years neural networks are existing. So what is new? What new we have got into this era, and why we are talking about this deep? So we had a good algorithm for learning the weights in network with one hidden layer. So if we have one hidden layer, so our backpropagation network algorithm works quite better. But these algorithms are not at learning the weights for network with more hidden layers. So if we have more hidden layer, so those so the backpropagation technique what we had was not very effective one, and that in fact was the force which stopped say for around 25 years. That limitation was there. So what's new now is the algorithms for training many layer. It's not to be later, it should be layer, mainly layer network. So new is the algorithm for training many layer network. So let us first move on to, as Sunil also told today morning, that we will talk about the simple neural network before going into this deep model. So let me just give you a very simple example, exactly how a simple neural network is learning, and then how we can make it work in a multi-layer domain or in multiple input cases. So, say if we have some problems or some data set given here, some tabular data given here. So we have two variables, x1 and x2, and we have an output y. So the input is 1, 1, output is 15. If the input is 1, 2, output is 19. If the input is 2, 1, it's 20. If it is 1, 3, it is 23. 2, 3, it is 29. So if you see this y, so based on this data, if you see this y, this y can be written as, absolutely you can think of that this y is a function of, so this x1, function of x1 and x2. So this is what we are trying our neural network to do. So given certain x1 and x2, we want to find out y. That's the issue. So that's what we are trying to say. So given a new sample now, so if I say that I have got a new sample, say 4, 1. I have a new sample, say 4, 1. Now what is the y? So that's a bit difficult to say as. So how we can find out? Now the question is, given this data set, what we are trying to do, or what a neural network or even a regression model, it's basically a regression problem, what that regressor will do. So we can represent this y as a function of x1 and x2. Now what is our job? Our job is to find out this function. What is this function? Okay, so that's one of our primary task we are going to find out through any machine learning model. So let us write it with a very simple concept. Okay, let me define this function to be something like this. Say ax1 plus bx2 plus c. So it's a linear function. So if I say that, okay, with a linear function, if I represent this association between x1 and x2, this x1, x2 and y to be linearly dependent, that means y can be written as, say, some coefficient multiplied by x1 plus some coefficient multiplied by x2, right? Then what we will be tempted to do is, so what is now, if we represent, or if we fix our function to be f. Now, if we fix our function to be f, this scenario can be represented by a neural network in this way. So, by the way, I am assuming that you all have some idea of neural net, some neurons. I hope so. So, if I say that this scenario can be represented by something like this. Sorry. Here we have a function f, and this function right now is basically a theta called as a threshold function. So here we say that this is our bias. We call it as b equals to 1. So this is our c. So this is our x1 and this is our x2. And here we write, say, some weight. Say this is w1. We call it as a here in this case, and this is w2. We call it as a b here. So now this function, this y, can be represented by this neural network here. So this is not a network as such, this is a simple neuron. So with one neuron having 3 input, we can represent this function. Now what is the task, or what is the difficulty here? So the difficulty here is the value of, what is the value of this a, what is the value of this b, and what is the value of this c. Or in other words, if we say that we need to estimate somehow the value of A, B, and C. Somehow we need to find out the value of A, B, and C. So in mathematics, statistics, basically, we have several techniques for that. We have MLE, least square methods. So by using those least square methods, we can easily find out this one by using certain matrix multiplication. Here in neural network, obviously we are not going to do that sort of computation. We are going to do a very simple and intuitive idea. So what we are saying is, okay, let us make a guess for A, B, and C. Okay, so let us start making a guess, or initial guess. So if initially I say, okay, let my A be 2, B is say 3, and say C is 10. If I make an initial guess like this, then once I put this x1 and x2 be 1, 1, then you can see that this will be 1, and as this is, so let me now, we have made the guess, this is 2, this is 3, and this is 10. This is always 1. So now we have 1 into 2, that is 2. So now we can write this at this neural, what this neural network will do is, sorry, 1 into 2 plus 1 into 3 plus 10, 1 into 10. So this is 15. Okay, then, sorry. So now we say that, okay, for first input, we have the correct output. So if I give 1 and 1 to this neural network, this network will predict 15. Now, what about the second input? So if I now say that, okay, this is my x1, this is my x2, this is my y, and this is my computed y. So let us represent it by y hat. So as this is 1, this is 1, this is 15, and computed 1 was also 15. Now the next input was 1, 2. So this is 1, this is 2. So if I give 1, 2, now you can also put here. So if I give 1 into 2 plus 2 into 3. So 2 plus 6, 8 plus 10, 18. I hope it's clear to everyone. Now instead of 1, I am giving 2 here. Next input is 2. So 2 into 3, 6 plus 2, 8 plus 10, 18. Okay, now we have made a mistake. So the neural network is not 100% correct right now. Earlier it was exactly correct. There was no error. There was no gap. But this time there is some mistake which is made by the neural network. But still it is very close to the neuron, the real output. Okay, let us take the third input, which is 2, 1. So if I say, sorry. If I give 2, 1. So with 2, 1, so if it is 2 and it is 1, it is 4 plus 3, 7 plus 10, 17. The exact output is 20, but it is giving me 17 now. So the error is increasing. Okay. So earlier it was no error. The error gap was just 1. Now the gap is increasing. Let us check with the next one, which is 1, 3. So with 1, 3, we will have, so now if we have 1 here and we have 3 here, so 9 plus 2, 11 plus 10, 21. The computed output is 21, whereas the system output is 23. And now last one is 3, 2. So if we have 3, 2, then we have 3 into 2, 6 plus 2 into 3, 6, 6, 12 plus 10, 22. So our computed output is 22, whereas the real output is 29. So here we have made a huge mistake. So now you can understand that even with a very random initial guess, we can make our network is able to make a prediction.
Sir,
Yes.
sir, for the last one, 3, 2, the output will be 22 or 23?
I think 2, 2, 2. No. This is
Okay, sir, it will be 23, 22.
6 into 6, 12 plus 10, 22. The computed output. And the one is already shown in the table. So that's the real output that we cannot change anyway. Now I hope it's okay. So if I say that
Yes, sir, it's okay. It's okay, sir.
this is 3, 2, so 3 into 2, 6 plus 2 into 3, 6 plus 10. So 22,
Yes,
the
Yes, sir.
computed one is 22, the real one is 29. Now, what is the question or what is the issue? So now you can see that since in this case, you can easily understand that it's a class and we have to take a small example. Otherwise, it will be difficult to show you on any slide. So, but in reality, this data set will be quite huge. This will be quite big on one. So almost in the range of, if we are talking about deep learning or even with a simple neural network, we have never less than 1,000 or 10,000 examples. In computer science, when we talk about, in most cases of computer science, you will get around at least say 1,000 to 2,000. Sometimes it is in millions, several millions also. So those many inputs. So now what we can say, we can define an error function. So if I now define, okay, this is the error. What amount of error I made? So this is 0, this is 1. So if I define that this error is difference of these two. So this is 0, this is 1, this is 3. This is I think 2, and this is 7. So this much of error I made. In some cases, you may find out that this error can be positive as well as negative also. Because this example is very say manually curated and very simple one. But in general, there can be some positive error. That means this value sometimes can be lesser than what is required, and sometimes it can be higher than what is required. So in that case, So what we say that, okay, if sometimes what happens is that there are some positive errors and some negative errors, and finally the error may sum up to be zero, may sum up to be zero. So to mitigate that effect or to reduce that effect, what we do, we take normally E square. So if we take E square, normally this negative concept or negative part will be reduced. So even if it is a negative error, by some means, if it is the error negative, we can take square of that, so that will become a positive one. So now we can get something like this, and we can find out a total sum of error. So if we add it, 59, so 63, 64, I hope so. 53, I'm sorry, 53. No, sorry, 63. 63 is the total error, the sum of all this error. We can take a half of this to make it the average mean squared error, root mean squared, average error basically. Average of the mean squared error. Basically mean squared means already mean. So we can say this to be, if we find out a mean squared error or MSE, then this will be divided by 2, because we are taking the square root, square. So we divide it by 2, sometimes by the n. So 2 is not a very concrete number, good option. We normally divide it by n, number of samples here. So this number of sample can be 5 here. So let me put that 5 only. Sorry. 5, and then let's remove this 2. So this will, we can say mean squared error. So since there were 5 inputs, so we say that 63 by 5 is our mean squared error. And sometimes people talk about taking a square root of this. So if I say that, okay, I will take a square root of this, then we say that root mean squared error, and popularly called as RMSE. Now once we have this, now this becomes an optimization issue now. So now we have an error and we want this error to be minimized. Practically, in fact, theoretically speaking, we want this error to be 0, because if this error is 0, that means whatever is being predicted is the real one, is very close to the real one, or exactly the real one. So if this error is 0, by some means, if you can make it to 0, that means whatever is predicted, or say whatever this y hat is, this y hat is very close, or in fact exactly same as the y is. And that's what our target is. Now, if this is the target, how to achieve that? So I always give an analogy. So those who are here and have experimented with the earlier FM system or radio system where we had a knob-based system, any knob-based system, I hope you understand. So you have a knob and you are trying to move that knob in order to come to a particular frequency. So say if you have a FM radio and you want to tune it to frequency 92.7, so your radio is already set to say frequency of 90, then you will start increasing, and then probably you will cross 92.7, and then you will realize, oh, I have gone into the other side. So let us make a small adjustment toward the next, means the reverse way, the anti-clockwise, say, and then you will make, and again you may come to the lower side, say, and then again you will slightly. So I hope that those who have experiences or those who have seen this sort of scenario, they can feel it, how precise that thing was used to be done at that particular time. Is there anyone who has this experience?
Yes, sir. We had.
You have. Then you can understand that how painful and how expert you have to be in order to basically tune it, isn't it?
Yes, sir. So when going to closure, we had to change it slowly so that it can be finally
So
tuned.
this whole idea is now, you just imagine that whole scenario with this neural network. So those who have done this, it is, I'm not saying the others cannot, but they can feel it. Okay, this is how our neural network is basically doing. Let me now come to that, exactly how this neural network will be doing that. So if we now plot, and now one more question, then we'll go to that plot. So whatever error we are getting here, so on an average we are getting, hello, yes, सर अभी एक क्लास है सर, बात 11 बजे के बाद बात करते हैं.
Sir,
Yes, please.
sir, here we will try to update the values of y then.
Why? I'm not
Y,
getting it.
y value. So for getting the zero error value, we will try to update the values of y or y dash.
I'm coming to that. Thank you for this question. I'm coming to that only. Exactly. So that's the point I was just trying to make. That now the question is, who is held responsible for this error? So you have to fix the responsibility. Who is responsible for this error? So answer lies there. It's around 12 point something. I hope 12.6. So on an average, we are getting an error of 12.6. It's a mean squared error, not root. So we are not taking. So the question is now what madam asked. So the real question now boils down to who is the responsible? So the responsible persons are not y or y hat. Responsible persons are these. These three are the culprit. Okay. If you can find out the proper value of this A, B, and C, which if I say in this case to be, I think 5x plus 4, 5x1 plus 4x2 plus 6, probably you will get the correct output in all cases. I hope so. 5, 4, 6, yes. Here A is 5, the real B is 4, I hope so. Otherwise might be C is 6, something like that. So if you put this, then probably let's see that Y real. So if it is 5, 4, 6, then obviously this will be 15. And then this will be 8 plus 6, 14 plus 1, 19. So then this will be 10 plus 10, 20. And then this will be 12 plus 6, 18 plus 5, 23. And then this will be 15 plus 8, 23 plus 6, 29. Okay. So the error will be 0. All cases, you can see. So whosoever asked me that last question, that lady, that madam. So I hope that you have got the answer. Exactly who is responsible for all this error and what is our target. So our target is to, as I told, that this A, B, and C, these value we took as a guess. So we made an initial guess. Okay, let this A be 2, B be 3, and C be 10, and we tried to fit this, and then we found that we have this much of error. Then what we are now trying to do, or what we will do now. So now we will try to that analogy what I just told, that okay, you can understand that now there are 3 tuners or 3 knobs. So even in different DJ functions and so on, so you might have seen that they have so many knobs, and then they are regularly just adjusting those knobs, bass, treble, and volumes, and so no. I think that everyone has seen, even if they have not practiced or used it, everyone has seen this in different orchestra or different sort of programs. So the music systems has those experts, have those the persons who are holding those musical instruments, basically the speakers, etc. They have different knobs, and then they are regularly adjusting it. So the music, all these musical instruments. So this is a similar tuning problem. So you started with the initial guess, and now we want it to be tuned so that this 2 becomes 5, this 3 becomes 4, and then this 10 becomes 6. Am I clear? If you can understand this, then the rest of the things are quite simple. That's the whole story of any neural network, or in fact, any learning algorithm. In any learning algorithm, start with random parameter. And once we have that random parameter, we start making certain output. And then we compare those outputs with the real output in a supervised setting. And then we try to tune these parameters. The parameters what I had a guess. So I had a guess that, okay, this parameter value will be 2. And now I'm saying that, okay, there are certain mistakes, certain errors, and now I will try to improve it. How to improve it? So on this axis, I am saying, okay, this is A axis, and this is the error. So now I am saying, okay, let us see one by one. Due to A, what is the error? Now you can understand that there are 3 knobs. So you have a knob for A, you have a knob for B, you have a knob for C. So this is my box. So in this box, what we are giving 2 inputs. So say this is my X1 and this is my X2, because these are the 2 inputs we have. So we have 2 inputs, X1 and X2, and we get a Y hat here. And then we have already seen that this Y hat is having certain mistakes. If this A was 2, this was 3, and this was 10. So as I told that, okay, that say FM tuning, let us first try to tune A. Now, if I tune A, so say this is, so this is 1, 2, 3, and so on, and there are certain value on the error curve. So now we know that on an average the error was 12.6. So say when this A was 2, the error was somewhere here. If you make A to be 3, might be this error may come down to this place. If you make it 4, might be this even comes down to this. If you make it 5, might be it comes down to this. If you make it 6, it will again start increasing. 7, it will start increasing. Say something like this. So this error will behave something like this. And it's very similar to that tuning of that FM radio. So when you start with say 90 and you want to tune it to 92.7, so you start with, so you initially start making a movement in this, and as you, this is your optimal point. But in that case, what is difference between that FM radio and this one is, in FM radio you had a target fixed. You were knowing that our fixed target or where I want to tune is 92.7, but in this case even you do not know that. So you have to make everything as a guess only. So it will behave something like this, and we call this as error curve. And now what is big issue in this one is this is just for one variable, but simultaneously you have to tune all these things, because once this curve may not look exactly if you just go with, because if you are not changing the other parameters, this may be, this optimality may not be at 5, maybe at 3 also this may show similar pattern. This error or the curve, this error surface looks something like this. So if we have this as the error surface, now as someone suggested, some participant suggested that he has an experience, and so if you see that, what you now next try to do is, if initially you were here, so initial point was here when A was 2. So is it okay so far?
Yes, sir.
So we can move ahead.
Yes, sir. It's absolutely. It's the participants are also telling in the chat box basically that they are understanding the concept.
Okay. Thank you, Sunil, for confirming this.
Yes.
So now the issue is initially once we had made that initial guess a equals to 2, and then we had certain error here. So we had certain error value here, this one. And then now the question is, as you can see from this curve, then you can assume yourself to be on a hill, and then you want to come down to the valley. Valley, not value, valley. So you want to come down to the lowest portion of this, lowest part of this hill. And obviously this is not so easy. If I say that, really imagine yourself to be on a hill or a hilly terrain, not on a hill. So a hilly terrain, normally I have drawn this curve to be in a very optimistic way and in a very simple way. But in a hill, those who have, I think in South India, we have some nice hills there. So if you have experienced those hills, the hilly areas may look something like this, say. So say if you are standing here, and if I say that you come to the lowest part of this hill, which is here, and you are blindfolded, so you cannot see anything. You are blindfolded, and you are standing here, and you have to come, basically you are here and you have to come to the lowest point. This is the similar problem here. I have just drawn this curve, you can say, for this area only, but later on, because there are other parameters also, this will, because sometimes if you increase, just decrease a, but if you are not increasing this 2, the error may increase. So combinedly, this curve may look something like this. But just to explain the concept, I have taken, you can assume that I have taken just one part of this. Okay, so now you are blindfolded, you are here, and you want to make a move, and you want to come down to this hill. So we call this algorithm to be steepest descent algorithm. Normally the algorithm or which comes to mind is steepest descent. This is just the reverse of hill climbing. So steepest descent says, okay, if you are here and you are blindfolded, what you can do, you can just move your feet and you can check with your legs, feet, that whether it is downward or upward. So right now wherever I am in, I have, say, if I consider to be 4 directions only, so east, west, north, south, and I will just check with my feet that whether the next part is at the lower side or on the higher side of compared to my current position. And where is that lower side? I will start making a move. So you will assume that you will check that this side is lower, this side is lower, this side is lower, this side is lower, this side is lower. Sorry. Say yes, this side is lower. And then you will, next movement, you will find out that wherever you are now moving, you are always going to have a higher side. So here only you will stop. And you will say that, okay, I have got the minimum point. This is the minimum point. But from this figure, you can see that this is not the real minima what we were targeting. Right? And this normally in those who study AI and normally hill climbing algorithm, we call this to be the local maxima. Here it will be no doubt a local minima. So this is a local minima problem. This is what we will encounter if we are just following a steepest descent algorithm. And that's why achieving, so making an initial guess and then achieving to this 5, 4, and 6 will be almost impossible. Okay, because it will be very difficult to reach to this local minimum. I'm not saying that we can never reach to this. There are several solutions for that, but it's really a difficult issue. Okay, am I clear? This one, this steepest descent. So now, once this steepest descent is, oh, okay, manually we can do this. Manually we are doing this steepest descent. Now, how this computer is going to do? So what we can do, we can write Although I'm not going to solve this whole equation, but I'm just trying to show you how you can do it. So if I write this error to be, if you look at this error was basically y minus y hat. So if I write this, then a square, I can write it to be y minus y hat square. And now given, and sometimes we use a half and sometimes we use n, that hardly matters because these are constants, so this constant doesn't have any effect on this. You know, constant doesn't have. If I say, for example, if I say you try to minimize this 5 minus say x square, you minimize this. So you will say that this minimum will come at x equals to 5, isn't it? Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
If I say that, okay, this into 100, what will be the answer?
That will be again
Same. 0.
The minimum point will be at x equals to 5 only. So that's what I'm trying to show. So in several books, you may get it. Some people may write half. Some people may write 1 by n. Some people may miss it also. But now you know that that hardly matters. Because anyway, that's not going, because that's a constant, and that constant is not going to change my minimum point. Okay. So that's the point I just wanted to make clear to you. So now with this, we can say that gradient, when we are saying that what I just told, that okay, by my feet I will try to find out which side is the minimum, lowest side, which side I should go. So that same thing can be find out in mathematics, can be done using the differentiation. Okay, so it's the differentiation which will help us find out along which direction or which side I should go. So if you take a differentiation of this, so dE square by differentiation with respect to whom? Say here in this case it is a. So you can write it to be, because there are many variables, we are writing partial differentiation. So it will be, you can write it to be dd of y minus, now this y hat is basically, if you say this y hat is this. So this y hat is ax1 plus bx2 plus c, and this whole square. And now if you differentiate it, you know that the differentiation is 1 by 2 into 2 into this y minus y hat into, if you differentiate this, so first you differentiate and then write the complete function, and then you differentiate, start differentiating inside this. So inside, if you differentiate for this, the differentiation will be 0, because this is a constant number, this is already given to you. Minus, for this differentiation will be x1 plus, all these will be 0. So 0 plus 0. So this is what you will get. So if you say it is y minus y hat and minus basically x1. So this, you can say that this is the value which gives me, which is the amount by which I should make my progress towards this one. How much this A should be improved or deproved, or basically in what way this A should now be changed. So that's the figure. So what that figure says, what is this number? So this is the error. By what amount I missed the real output. So this value gives me, y minus y hat gives me by what amount I missed my target. And this says that what is the weightage of that input, along which input I made that missed that target. So this is my input. So this is, again, just try to remember that what is that target, or what is that amount by which I missed the target. So y minus y hat is that error or that miss from the target. So if this was my target, I reached here. So this is my y minus y hat. And along which input? So this input was x1. So by that value, I will change. So now I can say, right, so A equals to, now A new, you can say A new equals to A old minus this. Okay. And now with this, we multiply a value, or basically we keep a factor which is called as a learning factor. Now, why this learning factor becoming important? If you remember this, again, this value is called as learning factor or learning parameter. Now, why this is learning parameter? So if I say that you might have seen those, so our faculty members and students, everyone can understand it easily. They have done someday that for whole semester, if you study, so if you are studying, you are going very slowly. But during exam, just before entering the exam, I have seen several students, they go through the complete book in just 5 minutes. They are also learning the whole book there. That means what? This learning, rate of learning will be different. How it will be different? So if I say that this is basically 1, and then this value will give some value. So now we can say here, if we are making a one step, might be this step is this much of long. Okay, this is the length of the step. So now you can see that here, once we are making a step of this many, this is my normal step, and I'm just jumping from this place to this place. So now once we come here, next here you will never go. Ye nahi jayega. Sorry. Here will never go. You will basically, let me draw this again so that so here, 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 and here. See. So we'll jump from this place to this. Next iteration, and next iteration this to this. Now once we'll come here, then from here I can again, since next this way I will increase, so I will come back, I will try to move back, and that's what someone pointed there, that at last moment I will have to make a lot of adjustment in that knob. And here you can find out that you will now make a back and forth movement, so you can keep on moving here only. So if you have given that your algorithm will run for 1,000 times and might be in just 15 steps you reach here, then after 15 steps your algorithm will continue and it will just make a forward and movement backward into just a movement between these 2 points. And finally it will end up stop. It will, when the algorithm will stop, either it will end at this place or at this place. Am I clear on this? So you are making a jump, you are moving ahead, and then you fall. Then you found that, okay, now I'm going to this way, I'm going to increase. So you come back, and then again you say, okay, next let me again go down. So next week again you are making and you are going down, and so you will start making a movement this way. What this learning parameter do now? If I multiply this value with a learning parameter, and this learning parameter is normally less than 1, so it is between 0 and 1. So if say this learning parameter is 0.5, for example, so then what happens that all these steps, you will have a half steps now. So you will jump something like this. So from here to here, then here to here, and then here to here, then here, and then probably here, and then again probably here. So finally you will end up, you will find out that finally you are ending up somewhere very close to the real input. Even in some cases you can say, as some of you pointed out, that okay, I can make initially I can make a big jump, but as we are moving towards, I can reduce this lambda to be a further smaller value, so that when I am very close to this, I can make it very small, so that my steps will be very small. So whenever we'll stop at a very closer to this lowest point. Is this idea clear to you? Intuitive to you? It's okay to you?
Yes, sir. And one participant is asking Vidya Raj that why A0 minus and why A0 plus not? I mean, in the formula, yeah, in the updated AN.
Okay. So whether it's plus or minus, that hardly matters, because say minus we are writing because we are trying to go down. So since we are going down, we are keeping minus. Okay, but sometimes if this value is lesser, then the value, the numerical value will also be negative, and they will ultimately become positive. But negative sign simply indicates here that we are going down. Since we are going down, gradient is basically on the upper side. So since we are going to the lower side of the gradient, we are representing it by minus. I hope that should be, he or she will be able to get that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So now with this simple introduction to neural network, and this idea, now this was just one layer network, and this, when we talk about that, okay, we'll have a multi-layer network, something like this. Although I have a figure there, but let me just point out one thing. So if we say that, okay, we have some network which is similar to this, so we have so many layers, and say here something like this. So it will be connected somewhere here. And again, similar to that, if you give two inputs, say here x1 and x2, in between here you can have more number of neurons also, and you will finally get some error here. Now this number of parameters, so the number of weights here, so there will be so many weights. All this, whatever dashes I have created, these are weights. So this error is not due to just one weight. So this error is due to all these weights. And so finally, so normally what we do, so we give input at this place, and again we have initially at certain random weights, that with the same idea. We had certain random weights or random value parameter values. So this x1 will go through this networks, these nodes, and finally it will produce certain output y. And now this output will be different from this y hat, will be different from the real output, and we'll have an error. Now based on this error, in a similar concept, I can say that this error is due to this node, this weight and this weight. And then we can penalize these weights. So basically not penalizing, in fact, we can say we are improving these weights. So we'll improve these weights. Now when these weights will be improved, these weights says why we are only being updated. If I have made certain errors, this error is also being propagated by these two weights to me. Because whatever I am doing, I am getting from a wrong input. So why this wrong input is coming? Because of these weights. So these weights should also be changed. So then we back propagate it. So we first update this one, then we move back. And in fact, no signal is propagating. So we are only propagating the errors. So first we update these weights, then we update these weights, these layer weights, then we update these layer weights. And this updation is done in several iterations over iterations, several thousand of times. Okay, so let us now move on to our examples. We have very less time left. So one more important issue is this gradient. So I just told you this gradient. This gradient value is normally small, and if you go down, because at every step you are going to penalize or you are going to improve something, you will again calculate the gradient. And as you go in a depth, this gradient becomes low and low. So if say my gradient is 0.0002, and if in further differentiation I get another say gradient which is 3, and in another one I get another gradient. So if you are going down backward, so third layer, so say first gradient was this much, second gradient was say at this layer this much, and the third layer here the gradient is something like this. If you multiply these numbers, this will become even closer to 0. They are becoming very close to 0. And if you have more layers, you can easily understand that as you go towards the input, the gradient value will become smaller and smaller. So that problem is called as vanishing gradient problem. That was one of the major issue to not to basically increase the number of layers in a normal neural network for a long time. Now we have several good functions, which I think my subsequent speakers will talk about when we talk about specific network. As I have seen the timetable there, where you have a dedicated schedule for CNN and RNN and so on. So there they will discuss in that context how to minimize or how to create this this sort of functions, and how to do it so that this vanishing gradient is, but the vanishing gradient I hope is clear to everyone, that as we go down, so the gradient value becomes smaller and smaller and smaller, and this problem is called as vanishing gradient. On the other hand, we could have exploding gradients also, where the gradients may have exploded. So if we have bigger values, say 6, 7, 8, 10, 15, 20, and something like that, then this gradient may become, if you are multiplying them, they will become quite a bigger number. Exploding gradient is easier to manipulate or handle because you can always keep a limit. Okay, if my gradient is going beyond say 100, keep it to 100 only, so that you can make a simple if check. But in case of vanishing, you can do that, because if it becomes 0, and at one you can also see that if this gradient becomes 0, if this value is becoming 0, because this is our gradient, if this is becoming 0, then no update will be done in this weights. So this weight, even if you are running this algorithm for say 10,000 times, you are basically stuck, that weight will remain same. This is another view of the neural network, where we say from a decision boundary perspective, since you have already gone through several machine learning techniques, so you know that given this weight, so if I use this sort of function, this was a linear function. So if I add a non-linearity here, so if I say that, okay, this is 1 to the power e to the power this is e to the power these values, we'll obviously add a non-linearity. Or if we say that this is a square of these two terms. So initially, if we choose a parameter, we'll create some boundaries like this. After one iteration, the boundaries may adjust, because as the parameters A, B, C changes, the boundary will change. So, and then in the next iteration, the boundary may look something like this, 4th iteration, 5th iteration, and finally you can get something like this in terms of a boundary value. So how this networks will exhibit. Okay. I know that I have already crossed the time, so just 2-3 minutes. I will just finish it. One important point: weight learning algorithms for neural networks are dumb. They work by making thousands and thousands of teeny adjustments, each making network to do better at most recent pattern, but perhaps a little worse on many others. But the good news is, by this dumb luck, eventually this tends to be good enough to learn effective classifiers for many real applications. Okay, and that's where now the whole community is involved. Now let us not make it or not keep it dumb only. This should be now explainable. So people are now working towards that. But right now we have this scenario. Some more facts. So one more thing, that if we have a linear one, we'll have a straight line. If we have a non-linear, we'll have something like this. There are some algorithms, like you might have studied SVM. They had, I think, SVM classes on SVM. So SVM always draw a straight line. But what SVM does, or what a neural network does, there is a difference between these two. You can see that the data set is really given is something like this. A neural network will try to fit a curve like this. On the other hand, what SVM does, SVM converts this data set to a different dimension. So that's called as a kernel machines. So there are, SVM has a kernel machines, and those kernel machines moves the data set to a different dimension, and thereby making them differentiable by a straight line only. So you can now see these two figures. Here the data set is very close to each other. SVM has basically taken two separate planes by converting them to transforming the data to a different dimension. So that's basic difference. This, I think, already feature detector. Very briefly I will go through. So if we have some data set, now if you just see one number 9, if you are giving this input, as I told that we will just give numbers. So what this input will do, these hidden layers will do. These hidden layers will, first layer will try to say learn something like how many straight lines are there, how many small circles are there, how many horizontal lines are there. So different hidden units will learn those different aspects. Okay, so different types of units, which is already there: neural convolutions, recurrent, long short-term memory, etc. I think that will be discussed by the subsequent experts on that one. And with this, thank you everyone for your patience, hearing, and interactions also. If any question or anything you are interested in to discuss.
Thank you so much for such a nice presentation, and especially the internal working of the neural network. Everyone must have understood. If any participant has any question, you can ask a couple of questions because we are running out of time. Again, we have at 11:30, we have another session. A couple of questions we can take, yes. Very, okay. So all the participants are giving very good feedbacks, but is there any question then that if you have? Okay, fine. So if there is no question, so I'd like to thank you, sir, once again. That was really a very nice session to understand the internal working of neural network, how the neurons work, how the input gets multiplied with the weight, and what is the meaning of the learning in machine learning. So learning means learning the weights. That's what you have basically focused on that point, and how we change that weight to get closer to our exact output. So thank you so much for.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. And if you have any question, you can write to Sunil, and he can later on. I have also shared my email ID. Sunil, you can also share the email ID, and if anyone has any point, we can always help. We are ready. So thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you. Okay, so participants, so we have done with the first session. Really, it was very informative. Hopefully, you must have also felt the same thing. Now we'll take the short 10 minutes break, and we'll start at 11:30, right? So we'll be back at 11:30. Please be connected. Okay, so just have tea, and then we'll back at 11:30. We'll start the session. Yeah, I'll provide the mail ID of Jyoti sir, and one information I'd like to add, that he is my supervisor, right? And I have done my research work, PhD, and under the guidance of him only. So I'll definitely provide all the details of him. I have everything. Okay. Thank you so much. We'll connect after 10 minutes.